Ultimate Endgame issue 2 is going crazy, because now we got Kilmonger joining the fight, along with some really interesting updates on Howard Stark and Kang. So with that said, if you're enjoying these videos, be sure to drop a like, subscribe if you're new to the channel, and don't forget to hit that bell up top to get all notifications. Alright, so coming right back, this picks up from when we saw Tony and the others taken to Immortus by Death's Head, when Immortus dropped the bombshell on these guys by letting them know that the Maker is the city. But it doesn't stop there, because there's so much more that he has to share. And his stories go on to confirm that he is Howard Stark, but because he's been in here so long and through so much, he's telling them all out of order, starting at 700 years, when he set off Saul's hammer in the city center, destroying Research District 1, just days before the Maker was able to use a chronal battering ram to pop the Darwin bubble early and get out. Then he jumps to 80 years in and he's like, just the other day faced him a long time ago. Still holding on to old habits, pretending to be what he wasn't. Felt a snap of nostalgia just before I felt the snap of my neck, and then nothing at all. Next, he goes to 444 years, where there was this huge battle between the Maker's children and his, which is basically the children of tomorrow versus his previous Death's Head. And at 1,310 years, he talks about a raid that went wrong when the Maker reached inside of him and made his lungs explode. But through all of this, Tony's like, wait, please stop. You're not making any sense. And Tony tells him to stop jumping around and just start from the beginning, when he was trapped in the city. And for a brief moment, this has Immortus thinking of the moment that he unmasked Kang, just after he was locked in the city. So Immortus tells him here the Forever War defies traditional chronology and continuity. It rejects attempts to connect cause and effect. Its order is a higher order, war in 4 dimensions. And after hearing this, Peter's like, it's okay, we all got crazy family. But we already know for both Tony and Doom, they're both well aware of the concept of fighting a war in 4 dimensions. So Tony goes on to ask Immortus what did he mean when he said the Maker is the city. And that's when Immortus jumps to 1,610 years in, which is a very interesting number. And he tells them, I was there, I watched, helpless, as he absorbed the city mind, spreading like an oil spill, coating every atom, fruiting bodies burst, puff, spreading microplasmic Maker spores, silicon machinery that remodels minds into receivers, extension of the Maker mind. And this is where we see the children of tomorrow breathing in that strange air that we saw in issue 1 while saying, I breathe you in, my Maker. Through you, perfection is possible. And Immortus makes it clear, take a breath and lose yourself, become an appendage. And that's where Peter looks at America like, oh, good thing we all kept our masks on. And I mean, she reminds him again that she doesn't breathe, but still. But hearing all this lets Tony know that it was Immortus who extended the Darwin bubble, which is what they were wondering when they first entered the city. So he's like, okay, you did this to keep the Maker cloud contained. And Immortus tells him, containment, yes, precisely. It's the only workable strategy, delaying the inevitable. And this is where we get a crazy twist, because America's like, not much of a delay, is it? I mean, the way the bubble works, only a few microseconds have passed outside since we've been in here, right? And that's where Immortus tells them that he reversed the field to buy time. And that's where Peter's like, wait, but then that means even though we've only been in here a few minutes, outside it's been months. And now this takes us to a number of updates on what's going on outside the city by way of the Phantom Reporter via the altnet. And even us getting the mention of the Phantom Reporter here is a pretty deep cut, with the Phantom Reporter of Earth 616 first appearing in 1940, with it being a guy by the name of Richard Jones, or Dick Jones, who became a vigilante because he was tired of seeing criminals operate above the law. But going into this, we get Uprising updates from the Phantom Reporter, as well as comments from other people on the altnet later on. But it starts out by saying how it's been a month since Iron Lad, Doom, America, and Spider-Man were lost in the city, and 8 Ultimates were lost in the destruction of the Triskelion satellite. Fearing the Maker's return, most Latvians have evacuated the fiefdoms of Hungary and Romania. Ultimates recommended maintaining a 200+ kilometer distance from the city or Latveria until more information is available. Anything or one that comes out of Latveria should be treated with suspicion, quarantined, and thoroughly examined, because now they have this quote-unquote mysterious infection spreading. Heaven remains quarantined from all outsiders, with all gates now guarded by Bruce Banner's forces, but he's too late. And this even leads to us getting an update on Shang-Chi and Danny Rand, who've been preaching on democracy and radical non-violent resistance while seeing protesters literally light themselves on fire to make a statement. And for a moment, Danny even tries to pull the kid away and tell Shang-Chi that he doesn't want to see this, but the kid's like, it's not a question of want, Danny. Our actions wrought this. We must see. Because again, he's really the one who's training Danny here. Then we're told in the North American Union, Vision and Anti-War Machine have destroyed most of the Han Hela fleet and freed the Rust Belt. Major blow to the Council. Joining Detroit, Anti-War Machines have been sighted in Flint, Youngstown, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Gary, and assumingly other locations as well. The Black Panther declined to join the Ultimates, after facing heavy criticism from hardliners for allying with outsiders. And now this takes us to a conversation between T'Challa and Eric Kilmonger that builds on the conversation we saw in Ultimate Black Panther issue 24, where now, a month and some change later, Killmonger's asking about the news about the Maker. Because at one point here he asked T'Challa, all this injustice, this deprivation, this rage I felt my entire life, all because of this one man. Can it be so simple? Because to Eric, he's like, okay, T'Challa's made me his sword, so what does this mean concerning the Maker? Are we at war? And to most of that, T'Challa's like, yes. But when it comes down to it being as simple as just the Maker, T'Challa tells him, no, of course not. Our problems are much older than the Maker, as old as man itself. But if we are to solve them, if we are to free a continent, all peoples, the Maker cannot be allowed to return. He would have the entire world in chains or no world at all. Then T'Challa goes on to tell him, I did not name you my sword. I named you the Sword of Wakanda. So be the sword, Eric Kilmonger. Be our vengeance and our protector. Kill the Maker. Because like we saw, T'Challa has things he needs to take care of too, that are also on a world-ending level. And now back over with Tony and the others, when they hear Immortus talking about delaying the inevitable, this leads to Tony being like, there must be another way. And Immortus is just like, there isn't. I would know. And from there he goes on talking about the other things that he's tried. Because he says here, my machine men couldn't kill him. Despite endless numbers, destructive power, and lightning fast artificial intelligences. The invincible Iron Army was made in my image. Neural networks modeled on my perfect mind. And right away, Death's Head 22 is like, yeah, that wasn't such a great idea. Because he's like, big mistake. They spend all day exchanging lewd messages in binary and hacking their own systems to simulate altered states. Then Immortus is like, the Deathlocks couldn't kill him. Constructed from the dead corpses of children of tomorrow, purged the Maker's taint. Death incarnate, which we saw an example of in the first issue when Death's Head saved these guys. And then Death's Head tells America here how some of these previous models started composing science fiction, and she's like, ooh, I'd like to read some. And then this leads to Immortus telling them about the Death's Heads, with them saying, and of course, Death's Head 23, my latest field commander. And that's when bro's like, nah, I'm Death's Head 22, big dog. And that's where Immortus is like, one of my finest designs, ruthless, unstoppable, and completely for sale. An entrepreneur to his nuclear core. And also after being corrected, he's like, and of course, he's no Death's Head 21. And all of this now has America questioning how they have an economy, much less currency. And Immortus tells them that he invented a digital currency just for this purpose, called Stark Bucks. And Death's Head 22 is like, they're only redeemable in the gift shop. And when Peter's like, oh, there's a gift shop? And I'm just like, bro, can we focus? Because it seems to me like there are more pressing matters. So Immortus tells him yes, but it's closed for remodeling. And Death's Head's over here like, bro, it's been closed for remodeling since before I was created. Over there looking like he's starting to believe it's a scam. But then when America asks, what is this place? And if they're still in the city, that's where Immortus explains to them how he's using Limbo, the place where nothing ever changes, to borrow time and work outside of the Maker's limitations. So of course, hearing this has Tony like, Limbo, the hell dimension ruled by Ileana Rasputin? And Immortus is like, what? No. Everything here is living on borrowed time. Limbo is composed of stolen seconds. A few from one century, a few from another. We are everywhere and nowhere at once. So in a lot of ways, this is Howard Stark's new Immortus engine. And he even goes on to say here, the Maker mind is powerful. Yes, but still is limited to 3 dimensions. The Lord of Time knows no such limits. That's me. He cannot follow us here. Though as we can see, the Maker is definitely trying to. But then he's asked why would he still be limited? And America goes on here saying he's had thousands of years to fix himself. And Immortus is just like, who can say? There are holes that can never be filled. Absences that are reflected and magnified in everything you do or become. And as we look at Doom, it feels like we're getting a bit of foreshadowing there. But while they're on the topic of Immortus engines, Tony tells him ever since they got here, his Immortus engine hasn't been working. So he asks his dad for his help to fix it. But Immortus basically just calls it an interesting primitive prototype. And he asks Tony where did he get it. So Tony's like, you gave it to me. Remember? It's me, Dad. It's Tony. You really don't remember me? And now when Immortus remembers what he saw under Kang's mask, with Kang being someone very different than Iron Lad, he just tells Tony, no, I don't know you. And now since it's like this whole time that they've been here, it seemed like Immortus has been a bit out of it, which is why Doom is over here asking, is he always like this? But Death's Head 22 explains that this is what thinking in 4 dimensions has done to him, since human meat minds weren't meant for it. So he's like, yeah, it's that and the tachyon wine. But now this leads to Immortus telling them how he believes that this is the best that they're gonna get. Because he tells them, I've died more times than can be counted trying to kill the Maker for reasons I long ago forgot. I've given every second 100 second chances. The Maker always wins. A temporary stalemate is the best we can hope for. Your smooth-minded meddling will upset the balance I've struck here. And that's where Peter's like, well, I'm convinced, good to go back. But Immortus tells him that he can't go back because there's no way for them to get out without taking the risk of releasing the Maker. So that's where Spider-Man and America are like, wait a minute. Because America tells Immortus, you can't keep us here. But he's like, I can. I must. But don't worry, you'll be safe. As their alarm goes off because they have a perimeter breach. Because now the children of tomorrow have made their way through. But like Howard explained before, the children are actually the Maker since they breathed him in and he's controlling them like puppets. So through them, the Makers come here for the Immortus engine. Because now that's the only thing stopping him from getting out and spreading everywhere. But also around this time, we get a series of new updates from the altnet, coming from your average everyday people with some really interesting usernames like Spider-Stan, He-Hulk. You even got one guy going by the name Iron Lade, which is creative, can't front. And feel free to drop your altnet usernames in the comments. But around this time, we see a ton of your average everyday people who have joined the altnet around the world, sharing updates about Kilmonger as he cuts his way through to Latveria. And the news spreads on who he is, mainly from one of these users who's known him from Nigeria. And as more updates are shared, more people learn about who he is and how he's representing Wakanda. Even though he's not wearing any Wakandan symbols, the fact that he's using a vibranium sword, it basically makes that same statement. And now we eventually see Eric make his way to Latveria, and that's basically where the social updates end, since Latveria has been evacuated and most people are left guessing what's going on there. But I gotta say, as Kilmonger gets ready to enter the city, I really hope he's got a solution for those Maker spores that are flying around the place, because it won't be good if he breathes it in. And right now, back with the others, they're still trying to play keep away with the Immortus engine, because that's what's maintaining the dome. So the Ultimates unite and they get busy. Which leads to a brief moment where the Maker's like, hello Doom, nice to see your face. But throughout this, there's also this undertone where it's like there's this suspicion that the Makers used Doom to get here. Because even when the children first arrived, it seemed like Immortus knew how the Maker found him, though he didn't get to complete that statement. But we'll talk more about what's going on with that in a moment. But with these guys knowing that this is a fight they're not going to win, Immortus ends up relocating the engine, which means they've only got so much time here before the place collapses, since it's built on borrowed time. And this leads to Immortus approaching Tony and telling him, we're running out of time, and there's still the matter of this, as he points to Tony's Immortus engine. So Tony tells him again, I can't make it work, Dad. So Pops just blasts him, and he tells him the rules are different here. The engine must be recalibrated to work with the novel space-time geometry. It took me a few years in this current form. It would take the Maker minutes. And as Tony's just begging his dad to stop, Immortus continues, saying, with an Immortus engine, the Maker will destroy this reality and replace it with a new one. Everything I've built, everything I've done, none of it will matter. And then he's like, I'm sorry, Tommy, I don't see the resemblance. And that just sets Tony off to the point where he's able to use the engine to blast Immortus. But it's not like he had any intention of hurting his dad. But in this moment, Immortus, or Howard Stark, he says, my son, where's my you? I remember you. Conqueror. Destroyer. As Howard thinks back to the moment where he unmasked Kang. And it's almost as if within his 4D thinking scrambled brain, the whole thing with him provoking Tony and possibly altering his engine in a sneaky way had all been planned on his part some time ago. But now this leads to Tony, Doom, Spider-Man, and America getting out of there, along with what seems to be a stray Deathlock, while Death's Head 22 and Immortus are still inside with the Children of Tomorrow. And just before this place collapses without the engine, the Maker's like, oh, look at you, Howard, you aged poorly. And he threatens to keep Howard alive and torture him for all eternity with his own stolen time. But when this place collapses, Howard's like, you weren't listening. I said borrowed time, because without the engine, it runs out. And in the final moments as this place comes apart, Howard looks at Death's Head 22 and he tells him, listen, my son, before we evaporate into absence, must tell you, Death's Head 18 was always my favorite. And I'm just like, bro, them your last words? But now this has Tony and the others back where they started, trapped in the city with no way to win, with the addition of this wandering Deathlock that may turn out to be something. But also you have the case of Tony who just lost his dad again. But then it's here where Doom hears a voice. And only Doom hears this voice, with it saying, welcome home, Doom. It's good to have you back. Your help finding Limbo was appreciated. But killing Immortus was just the beginning of our work together. Don't worry, I have no doubt you'll make your Maker proud. Man, yeah, this story just keeps getting crazier. So if you enjoyed the video, be sure to drop a like and let me know if you picked up the subtle cues of Doom being compromised out here. Oh, and don't forget to drop your altnet usernames too. I want to see those. And so now real quick, I want to give a special shout out to all the patrons. Thank you guys for all of your support. And for anyone who's new here, who wants more information on how to support the channel, I got a link below where you can go to patreon.com/dopespill. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and we'll do it again on the next one. Alright, later.